Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Patrick Chanezon from Microsoft. I used to be at Docker not that long ago, and one of my last projects was to advertise CNAB. So in this panel, we're going to talk about CNAB, and then we have a panel with Chris from Docker, Darren from Intel, Michelle from Microsoft, and Simon from Docker. Before we get started, so I have a few questions to get them started on the panel, but I'd really like to get your questions. I think it's a small audience here. The goal there is to get your questions out of the way, and we have a good set of people who have played with the spec. Before we get started, I wanted to know who here has played with either Duffel, Porter, or Docker app. Okay, so a few of you. All right, very good. So we'll get started right away with a question for Michelle and Simon. What's CNAB? What is it about?
Yeah, so CNAB stands for Cloud Native Application Bundles. Throughout our work in the cloud space, we discovered that our applications are not really like one thing anymore. It's multiple components working together to create this application experience for an end user. And so one of the things that we discovered or came across continually was that it's really hard to describe all of the components that make up your actual application. So CNAB is a specification that helps you describe your distributed application, all of the components, and how they work together. You want to add?
Yeah, I think I see this like the RPM or DEB format for the cloud. Like it's a very small specification in some sense, but that is completely generic and that lets you package whatever installer you want in a format that can be recognized by many tools, like for now Duffel and Docker app, but many others in the future.
Then I have another question, which is why creating a new spec? How does it compare with the existing packaging formats out there?
Does anybody else want to?
I don't mind. Yeah, we didn't find a packaging spec that did anything like that. Everything was focused on a very specific task and not being a meta packaging format. So just taking Helm for an example, it's great at being a way to describe a Kubernetes application, and they have a packaging service, but it's only for Helm. So what happens if your application includes infrastructure, like a hosted database or something else? There's no way to package both of those things together, and that's the problem that CNAB's trying to solve. It's just you have a tool chain which has multiple tools to deploy your application and not just one single tool. Yep.
Any perspective?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Okay, very good. So then I'd like to ask each of you, what's your interest in the CNAB spec and why did you get involved? What are you trying to get out of it?
I can start us off. Yeah, so I'm one of the core maintainers on CNAB and Duffel, but I'm also a core maintainer on the Helm project, which is a package manager for Kubernetes. And we ran into the problem that Chris just described, which was, you want to deploy something on Kubernetes, that's great, but there are things that are not going to be running in your cluster, like a hosted database. There are some things that you might need to do in DNS to configure your certificate management solution. And so we wanted a solution to describe basically the entire problem. So this is, for me, it's taking our experience with writing previous package managers and packaging solutions and kind of taking the next step forward and applying those best practices to this broader packaging format.
Yeah, for me, I guess it's a bit conservative. I don't.
Conservative?
No, it's a bit strange coming from Docker, but I always thought that application shouldn't be just containers. And we tend to do this kind of thing, like trying to put everything inside a big compose file like my applications plus database plus things like that. But in the cloud, in the world of cloud, I want to take advantage of managed services. I want my application to leverage managed databases, managed Redis, managed blah blah, and actually it was difficult for us at Docker to define a format that would address these needs. And when we got in contact with Microsoft around the CNAB spec, actually it was really clear that we could evolve our tools to be very great at doing containers and leveraging whatever comes from from other ecosystems to plug that with managed services and things like that. So you can expect Docker App to become much more aware of this kind of hybrid deployment things, because that's something that we internally want to do.
So a lot of people ask, why is Intel sitting up here? Because we just sell silicon. That's all we really do. But I'm actually a solution architect at Intel, and we've been out there talking to lots of what we call our end users, companies, and no one's talking about, oh, I'm going to deploy my whole application in one container. It's really a bundle of containers working together. So when we first, we've been working on something like this ourselves internally. How do we bundle all of these containers and applications together for full-blown systems and solutions? Because that's what people want. That's what application developers are really trying to get out there and get value to their customers. So when I saw the spec, I went, wow, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I need something agnostic. So on the back end, I can do either Helm charts or Terraforms or whatever, but I can simply define an application and all of its containers and all of its services that are needed. So when I saw this, I got really excited. In fact, I was telling the guys here, I actually wrote an implementation of the spec over Christmas. Because I didn't have anything else to do, I guess. So I'll let you guys have that once I clean it up a little bit. We'll advertise that.
Hey Darren, where's your implementation? Is it on GitHub already?
It is on GitHub, but in a private repository. I haven't released it yet, so.
We're waiting patiently. Yeah. So there's two aspects to CNAB that interest me. The first was we were playing with containerizing the toolchain before CNAB, before we started collaborating with Microsoft. As an engineer, I'm lazy, and I did not want to have to do backwards compatibility stuff if we started introducing new application formats. And so this idea of containerizing the toolchain, so you package the thing that defines the application, so a compose file or a kubeyaml, and the tool that deploys it together is an interesting idea, because that way you could define your application in a different way and use the same tooling and have the same flow and make it work. So we were looking at that already. And then we started chatting to Microsoft, and they were like, hey, we're doing the same thing. We should probably stop doing separate things and work together. So it was a tactical thing in the sense of it just made sense. But I also really like the, Docker's slogan is such as build, share, run. The share part's been changed. It used to be ship, but share makes more sense. And that share part is super interesting to me. In the same way we have this container images we can share via the registry, every single person here has written a Docker file where you do from that, and you put in that name of another image. I want the same thing for applications. Like, that's the value we get from containers, and I feel like if we can do the same thing with applications, that's an awesome thing. You shouldn't have to rewrite everything from scratch every time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, personally, I'm very excited about the spec when I saw it initially, because it's really something that will help app developers package their application. They know how to package it. Yep. And then as an ops, I just have a few parameters I need to put in there. Yep. One other question is, we started that spec together like a few months ago. Where is it at today? Where does it live? What's its governance? What's its state? Is it 1.0 already? Where is it going?
I'll give that to one of the maintainers of the spec.
Okay.
We're at currently at 1.0 working draft. So we've been working on it for the last several months, trying to get more folks involved. And it's really awesome. Like Docker got involved. We have folks from Intel, some folks from Pivotal have joined us recently, and so it's really cool when we like announced it. Some folks came out of the woodworks and were like, "Hey, we want to do the same thing," or we've been working on something like this, and we just want to like partner. So that's been really awesome. We've been working with the community to get us to a 1.0. We're mostly stable now. We have a few pull requests, few things that need to just go in. Maybe they were merged yesterday. I haven't checked. But at that point, we can probably call it 1.0 and then do additive changes. So we're really, really close. And it's been a great experience working with the community. You can find out more information on cnab.io. We have like calls every other week with the community. They're recorded. We have great notes. We have a Slack channel. So yeah, that's the way to get involved. And Simone just joined us as a core maintainer on the CNAB spec, so I'll let you share.
Yeah, so like Michelle just said, it's pretty much V1 ready. We are just doing the final touches, removing things that are a bit ambiguous or make not so much sense, and yeah, basically polishing the wording and everything. But yeah, the current core specification is pretty much usable as is today, and shouldn't change that much for in a technical sense for until the release. And the one interesting thing is that we are trying to split the spec between the core runtime spec and the distribution part, and we are trying to find a way where we can release partial stable specifications and additions to this spec in an out-of-bound way. And so yeah, I guess that will be our work for the months to come.
So actually, tell us a little bit more about that. What's after 1.0? Do you have an idea already of the kind of things you want to work on there?
Yeah, so after 1.0, there is all things related to registries, all things that we showed with Docker app push and Docker app pull things during Docker Crone. It's not yet in the standard. We want to offer this to the CNAB standard as well, and to the CNAB specification as well. And another aspect that we are currently discussing actively is bundles dependencies, like declaring that a given bundle provides a service, or that a given bundle requires the presence of a service anyway. So it's something that we are designing right now. It's open. You can contribute, give ideas, opinions, and please do that, because it's really critical for the success of the project.
I think you got it. Those are the two big ones: dependency management and the storage registry solution. So. Yeah.
So anybody in the room has participated in the CNAB specification process?
You haven't spoken enough. We'd have to pull you in.
Okay, so you're all invited into their next call. Another question I wanted to ask all of you is, what is the coolest use case for CNAB that you've seen out there? It's still early in the spec, so I know, but.
I get to go first, so I get to take the one I've seen. It's probably the one they've all seen, but very early on, Seymour wrote a quick POC which deployed a database on Azure and then spun up a bunch of services using Compose on top. And it was just an awesome demo. I remember he presented it, I think, I'm trying to remember where you did it. Was it, because we have team demos every 2 weeks, but I'm not sure if it was there or somewhere else, but I don't know, it might have been with Matt Butcher's team, actually.
I remember it was an internal call at Docker, and you presented it from your laptop, and it was working only on your laptop.
Of course.
And the next week, I had to fly to Redmond to do a video with Michelle here, and I pinged Simon. I said, how do I make this stuff work?
It was great because it just crystallized exactly the problem it's trying to solve. It's just, is Compose the best way to define a hosted service? Maybe, but not at the moment. And maybe Terraform or something else is good to stand up infrastructure. So let's leverage both tools for what they're good at. And it was just the perfect demo to do that. Like it was like the hello world of CNAB in my mind.
Yeah. For me, I've actually used the spec to help me define a application running differently in different environments. So because you can pass environment variables through, I say in dev, it's going to only spin up 4 microservices, but in production, I've got high availability, I've got scalability, I've got compliance tools that are all running. So I've created that ability to spin them up in different environments. And the cool thing about it for me is, as a developer, I can just go grab one application stack or one application bundle and use it and inject my own code in there. And I have all of the policies already built in that are needed for my production. So we've been deploying this in some of the tools that we're using at Intel. So it's really cool.
When we were first starting out with like example bundles, I went like the only way for me to get excited about a project is if it's really going to help me, selfishly. So the thing that I do, or I used to do a few times a day, was I would spin up this Kubernetes cluster. I'd install Helm. I'd install my certificate management, and then I'd configure DNS. The way that I'd spin up Kubernetes is I'd use a managed solution, and Azure is free for me, so I used AKS. And so because I was doing that so many times a day to stand up an environment for me to test on, I just decided to package that whole thing, which used Azure, Kubernetes, Helm, and DNS. Like I just packaged that all up into a CNAB and actually used it for myself. So that's what I liked to use it for, to make my life a little bit easier. Because remembering different CLIs is like not fun or easy. I'm also really interested in seeing how CNAB is used in like the IoT scenario. We've only like had a few people like kind of come up to us with interest in using CNAB in this scenario, but I think that's like in the non-network IoT edge use cases, like it'll just be interesting to see how it plays out. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, in fact, it's the same as Michel. The sample which deploy an AKS plus Azure database plus Helm plus the application on top of that in a single package with the life cycle that is completely tied all of this together. Like if I uninstall my application, it will actually deprovision my cluster. It's something that sounds just great for me in a cloud native world, and yeah, that's probably my favorite example.
I love it.
2 turns.
Oh, I had to steal it back. Matt Butcher announced CNAB at the last DockerCon, at DockerCon US, and his presentation was a CNAB. So it was extremely meta, but it was an extremely good example of what CNAB can do.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was really awesome. Yeah. So what I wanted to know is, has anyone in the room played with CNAB or seen other cool usage, or do you have any interesting use case for it, or things that you're thinking it could solve for you?
I'll take the mic down there.
I can, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's better that way. They can hear it on the video.
Right. So I work at SAS Institute, and we're working on our Docker solution. And we started on the Docker solution a few years ago, and we have written what we call application data spec. It's basically the same thing as you guys are doing, except we kept it in-house. And I'd like to have you guys elaborate on the tooling around the CNAB spec and how it can help us deploy into like Kubernetes and generate Helm charts, because my product's so complicated, I can't just write out Helm charts. I have to generate them from order data. And I would like to not have to maintain the application data spec that we wrote in-house anymore. I'd rather have some open source project that we can contribute to. So I got about 150 microservices, 7 pets. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Michelle, is it something that Porter could help with?
Yeah. So what are you using today, actually? I'm really curious.
More in-house.
More in-house, cool. Well, you could package all of that up in a CNAB.
I don't really want to package that up. I want them to work on other things and not
Yeah.
work on in-house tools.
Absolutely. So Porter is this installer for CNAB, and it has its own concept of mixins, which you can then use to deploy things. So there's like a mixin for Terraform, there's a mixin for Azure, there's a mixin for Helm. It's not going to necessarily generate charts for you, but it can help you more easily define, using this format, how to deploy your applications, and you can use this concept of mixins to actually configure everything and spin it all up.
Cool.
Porter.sh is the...
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's open source.
So if I wrote the piece for Porter that did the Helm charts, is that something we would be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I don't want to maintain it in-house by myself.
Yeah.
That's a good reflex. Any other questions while I'm out here? You're going to make me run back, aren't you? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, there's Mike. Oh.
We're just kind of in the interesting use case realm. So one of the things that I'm at Virginia Tech, and on some of the applications that we're working on, we've got feature branches, and we want to be able to deploy QA environments on the fly and that kind of stuff too. And so, obviously, a perfect use case for this. Okay, we need a provision SSL certificate, update the load balancer, actually deploy the app, the database, everything else around it. And so deploying the app and undeploying, that's not too hard to do. That's just an install, uninstall, and the CNAB actions and whatnot. But one of the things that we were looking at was for, especially a QA environment, it's not being hit that often. And in the cloud, we don't want to pay for those deployments when nobody's planning to access them. And so right now we've got a system in place with a couple Lambda functions and everything, looking to see what stacks are actually being accessed and whatnot. And if a stack isn't being accessed, go ahead and freeze it. And so that could potentially, we're looking at using CNAB there, and that's just another action to basically freeze a stack, take it out of commission for a little bit, and then there's another thaw when it's ready to be accessed. Okay, let's put it back in. But the freeze and thaw is just really just taking the app out, but we don't want to deprovision the SSL certificate, everything else. So basically different actions for different use cases for this environment, and then once we're ready, completely done with the environment, now we can go ahead and completely remove the application. And so it's been an interesting exploration there of the various actions and things that we can put into that are available through the CNAB spec. And
I sort of just wanted to follow up. You made me think about it. The more general question was like, how do you feel and how do you envisage the ability to add or remove custom verbs or additional verbs that may or may not be in the spec but turn out to be, in particular cases, very useful?
Yeah, I'll take that one because I've created a lot of actions myself. It's in the spec to create your own actions, and there's only a couple reserved action words there. I think 4 or 5, 3 now. Yeah. So it's really important, that concept of adding your own actions. I found it really important for me for the same reason. I want to be able to spin up and spin down kind of dynamically or freeze. So I have the same types of actions in mind. So
I want to make a tool with thaw and freeze as actions. That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the Docker app implementation, we have custom actions in the CNABs built with Docker app for things like status, like render, like I don't know how many, but there are many. Validate, yes. So yeah, we have a few custom actions, and we tend to add more some things like logs and things like that. And if you look at the CNAB specification, there is a non-normative section where we are trying to introduce well-known custom actions, which will be prefixed by io.cnab or something like that, so that we can have a common interface for common concerns like logs, status, and things like that. So yes, that's a concern that we are really aware of, and we are tackling this.
I have a question about that. Are the action names namespaced? Like, is my is my duffel thaw or duffel freeze going to work the same as yours?
All actions should be namespaced, except for the mandatory ones, which are install, update, upgrade, and uninstall. But all actions should be namespaced. Yeah, and that's why we want to introduce some well-known actions which will have a well-defined namespace, because we can guarantee that your Microsoft.freeze is the same as Docker.freeze in terms of interface. So yeah.
I'm sure we can collaborate on freeze. One question for you, Simon. What's the status of CNAB implementation in Docker app? Like, are you using the whole spec? Is it done? Is it still a work in progress?
So it's actually the Docker app implementation is actually based on Duffel. Under the hood, we render the Duffel code base for the runtime part. We use kind of a subset of the spec. For example, for us, every parameter is of type string. This is because we don't support parameter validation yet for Docker app. It might change in a bit. So yes, we restrict ourselves to a subset of the spec, but we are also a bit in advance for things like push and pull. So we have invested in a project called CNAB to OCI, which is an implementation of push-pull for apps, which has some interesting features, like it guarantees the immutability of an app down to individual service images. And yeah, that's something that we have today in Docker app, and that we are working to contribute that into the spec.
Oh yeah, and so we've seen the demos of Docker app push and Docker app pull from Docker Hub. Michel, I had a question for you. In the CNAB spec itself, like, is it designed? Is the CNAB bundle designed to be pushed and pulled from any registry out there?
Yeah, that's the plan. That's the registry portion of the spec that we're gonna work on. There is, however, an implementation in Duffel, or an integration in Duffel with the CNAB to OCI project, so you can do Duffel pull and push now. And Sylvan worked on that as well. He's another core maintainer on the Duffel project.
Any roadmap for Duffel bag?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Duffel Bag is a project that we worked on. It's a GUI CNAB installer built with Node. So, we've been working really hard to get the specification in line first before we go back to working on Duffel Bag. But there is a prototype out there if you want to check it out. It's a really cool project. But yeah, we're trying to get that spec in line, get the reference implementation in line with the spec so that we can work on other really cool tooling.
Yeah, it's something that a bit hard at the beginning of this kind of project because since the spec is a bit moving still, if you have dozens of tools that you develop concurrently that exploit this spec, and the spec is also a moving part, it's really, really difficult to maintain all these things together. So for now, we try to focus on two main tools, like Duffel and Docker app, because it's just more manageable.
Yeah, it makes sense. How about Chris?
I think this is also another interesting part of how CNAB is being developed. It's being developed in the open, so you can come to the meetings by people from multiple different companies building different tools. And it's almost the best way of building a spec because we're all testing it as we're going along. So it's not like we made the spec, then we made a tool. It's we make a bit of the spec, we build a tool, see how that feels, then push back the ideas into the spec that makes sense to be in the spec so that other people benefit from that. So it's an iterative process, and it's been really good so far. I must say the community on who's working on the spec, everybody's friendly and helpful. We've had multiple pair programming sessions across companies working on all kinds of things, and it's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, having several implementations is really key to exercising all aspects of a spec. Another question I had for all of you is what's the relationship between CNAB and Anthos, or is there any relationship?
Do you want to? Oh, okay. I only heard the announcement for Anthos. I don't think that there is really much of a relationship. So you're referring to the Google platform for deploying applications? Anthos, yeah. So I believe it's a way for someone to deploy workloads on the Google platforms, but also manage their workloads on other platforms. CNAB is a packaging format, so I wonder what they're using under the hood for a packaging format. And I don't know enough about what kind of workloads it supports, whether it's like a single. Oh, you do? Oh, good.
Very good.
So, I mean, they announced it at Google Next, and Intel was actually instrumental in helping them with that launch. They're running it on our brand new Xeon processors. It really is a managed Kubernetes on-site. That's really what it is. So you can use Helm charts with that. You can use anything. CNAB, to me, still has a good play there because you still want that abstraction layer away from the different tooling that you're going to use. As we mentioned before, not everything necessarily can be bundled into a microservice. There are going to be some things that you have to do outside of that realm. So to me, I think it fits on top very, very well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Do we have another?
No. I mean that answers the question. So it seems that Anthos is more designed for containers only.
It is primarily for containers, and just so I mean, this is Google's play the same way that Azure has Azure Stack, and now we saw that VMware just announced that they can run anywhere on anyone's cloud. AWS has their Outpost. Everyone's moving into this hybrid world, but be very clear that that's mostly infrastructure that they're talking about. To me, the application bundle is still extremely important. That gives me that flexibility so I can run on any cloud, whether it's on-site or in a public cloud. And for Intel, we're just happy that we want you guys to use this because you'll create new things and consume more and more silicon. Because that's all I care about, right? I don't care where, just consume more, right?
I'm so glad you knew something.
Yeah, that's right. As long as it's not empty.
Sign me up for that. Is there any event planned around CNAB, like community events, hackathons, or Michelle?
Check out CNAB or keep a tab on cnab.io for upcoming events. We do meet every 2 weeks on Zoom. All the information is on the website. We don't have any specific hackathons coming up, but it's an excellent idea, and I suspect there will be something coming soon in the next few months.
At KubeCon Barcelona, I'll be giving a talk about CNAB as well. It'll be an introduction to the spec and just talk about how we got there and whatnot. So yeah, if you're there, stop by. Yeah.
Cool, and I think Scott Colton, I think, will have a workshop on CNAB at KubeCon Barcelona, and Scott and I are probably going to do one at KubeCon Shanghai as well. So yeah, Ralph explained to us everything the other day, so we're ready to go. So any plans to extend CNAB to package function as a service? So I'm using a lot of Azure functions nowadays. That's really something I'd like to use together with containers. Any plans to put some aspect of that in the spec or in the implementations, or is it just an invocation image away?
Yeah, so it wouldn't go into the spec. The spec doesn't want to talk about what things should be packaged. It's specifically very generic. We constrain things at the tooling level. So either somebody could write a new tool that exercises the CNAB spec to install serverless things, or something like Porter, which is a meta packager, could do it, I think. Anybody else?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it'd be a cool mix-in for Porter, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's my new side project then, I guess.
Yeah, but anyway, the spec is designed in a way that we don't care about what is inside your invocation image. So it can be function as a service. It can be Azure specific stuff. It can be pretty much everything. It could even be something that will buy something on a server on Amazon and put it in your own cluster, and yeah, we don't care about what you put in it. And that's the main goal of the spec, is that we shouldn't care, and you should be able to put any kind of installer in a CNAB bundle.
So, any questions you have for the panel? Yes?
Why should have sat so far back? So I had a question around repository technology. So I'm brand new to this spec, and I'm browsing through it, and it looks like you guys have got a bundle. It's tarball with some metadata. Wonderful. I make my living making those. The OCI spec is the other way. So have you guys thought about a repository technology for the packages so that they can be shared?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ideas of how to package these and store these in registries. The one that I'm most familiar with is CNAB to OCI. What that does is it packages everything you need for an application or CNAB inside an OCI image. Well, it's actually an OCI index, yeah.
So on that one, I could use a registry.
Yeah, we're extremely lazy. We don't want to build another application sharing device. We already have this giant tarball store called the Hub, and so we just want to leverage what we have. So,
right. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It also has the advantage that if you have this infrastructure set up already, you can reuse it, and reuse is good.
I did have one other thing. Being a producer of software, I would love to be able to entitle my customers to get to a repo, and the Hub doesn't do a good job of that. So that's something that I would like to see also, because my customer buys my software, my customer gets access to all the software and the CNAB bundle that helps them install it, but he didn't buy it, so he doesn't get to it, but you bought it, so you get to it. Just a feature request.
Yeah, we have the notion of the store on the Docker Hub, where you can put up certified things and sell them. I don't know if we push that enough. Maybe we should be pushing that more. But I think that'll become more and more of a thing as as we get this application notion inside registries. Yep.
All right.
All right, so this is a kind of newbie question. So we use Terraform a lot, and I see that this is something that the spec is designed to use as part of being able to stand up infrastructure. So if you start to use, install a package multiple times, how do you differentiate things like the Terraform state and things like that to manage this so that they can all kind of coexist in maybe the same cloud account, but still have their own independent areas inside of it?
Does anybody want it, or otherwise I can go for it. So CNAB is more generic. It doesn't know about Terraform or anything else. There's two major parts to it that I suppose we should have started with a 10 minutes like CNAB 101. I think it's such a new spec. We should have done that right. We'll know that for next time. But basically, there's two parts that are interesting. There's the bundle definition and the invocation image. The bundle definition includes metadata and some other things like parameters, credentials, and it points to this invocation image, which actually is an installer. It's just a container image, that you can put whatever you want inside. It has a known entry point and it has a known structure, so that the runtime tooling can read the bundle, find the invocation image, and then put the parameters and credentials in the right place so that when you run the invocation image, it does the install or gets you the status or upgrades or uninstalls. So at the CNAB level, we don't have any vision into what Terraform's doing. The contract we have is you put in parameters and credentials and give it an action, and then it runs that through the invocation image, and then that does something on the other side.
Yeah, so there's this, one of the pieces that is about to get merged is the outputs spec, or the outputs part of the spec. So say you do something and you want, like a config file or, some state information about what just happened. So that part of the spec is about to be merged, and that'll define how you get your outputs and then pass them into another action and do things like that. We also have claim storage, which is like part of the spec as well. This is a claim is something, it's like a record that gets defined when you do an action, or it gets modified as part of an action. So this would hold some information about whatever you just did. So kind of look for the claim storage piece, and the outputs portion is what you're...
That makes sense. And this kind of goes with the earlier question about freezing and thawing environments, right? So there are going to be infrastructure where you want to maintain, and that's where I can see some of those maybe, I don't know if there are claims or at least part of the output that could be shared among different bundles. Is that something that kind of makes sense, at least the way that's been thought?
So shared between bundles, that's the output. The idea of the outputs is that you can then take the outputs and use them for something else, which could be another bundle. It could be the runtime tooling or something else. It's just, it gives you another, at the moment we only have a contract for what goes in, nothing for what comes out. So we're just creating a contract on the other side so that you can use it for, continue the chain.
Yeah, this idea of a contract for the output is actually foundational to what we want to do with package dependencies and declaring that a given package provides a given service, because we will have to find a way to define a service contract, and it will certainly be in the form of a partial output contract. So yeah, that's something that we are actively working on, and then yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh. Hey. Yeah. Hi. A quick question. It's very interesting that artifact, like a bundle, can be shared via registry. So the existing stuff for apps and images with bundles, like things like signing and promotion policies, is that something on your roadmap?
So when we designed the CNAB to OCI thing, we actually did that with people part of the app definition team who works on Docker app, and we also involved people in Docker Hub and in DTR.
Sure.
And so the goal, we set ourselves a set of goals. One was immutability from the bundle down to the component images. The second one was image promotion flow and security scanning at the application level.
Nice.
And the actual design of what we did provides this. And the beauty of this is that as we reuse OCI index and things that DTR already understands, actually they didn't have anything to do except for the UI for supporting security scanning and image promotion at the application level, and that's really great. I'm really happy with that.
Awesome, thank you so much. One more question was like how, I'm just taking an example of how images can share code base and the hierarchy. Is that something that is available in CNAB? Like have a small module and then from that module you mix in, you said mix in, but is there base CNAB and then things like that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because when I was reading through the spec, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. You're mixing the invocation images that you were mentioning earlier gives you that ability to mix in different types of invocation. So I can mix in Terraform and I can mix in Compose into the same invocation images, which are basically installers, for no better word for it. But they're actually extended beyond installers because I can perform any action in there. So they've come up with a great pattern, and it goes way back into your object-oriented type. It's a very simple inheritance pattern that they're using to do mix-in, which is really brilliant because it's simple.
Awesome.
So yeah, it gives you that.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Patrick.
Very good question. Yes.
So based on what you just said, and might be blasphemous at DockerCon, but we've got this kind of legacy app that is, ASP.NET, Razor with SQL Server running on hosted cloud service in Azure, and it's a nightmare to install and maintain that. Would that be a wonderful use case to build a CNAB bundle around, and then when I make patches to it, I have another one, and we know exactly what's being deployed and run?
I think that's a brilliant way of bringing legacy into the modern data center. This is a major problem that I try and address with most of what I call our end users that are using our technology. They say, I've got this application running on the mainframe in COBOL. No one knows how it works. It just works. But I still have to develop new applications on top of how do I install these new applications? And CNAB gives me that ability because I can bundle things together that are a mix of modern and legacy together.
And then you can cryptographically, like I have a hash that says this is the thing, and I know what that means, which we don't have that now, really.
No, it's all ad hoc, and yeah, script monkeys are doing it, right?
That's right.
I just wanted to add, as long as you run it on Azure, it's fine.
That's right, Azure. Just keep buying our chips. That's all I care about.
That's it. Okay, any other question? All right, so I just wanted to ask each of you to have a word of conclusion about CNAB. What do you expect in the future going about it?
So what do I expect? I expect the collaboration to continue. I think we've got something that's going really well right now. I'm sick of the spec stuff, to be honest. I want to start seeing more tools because we've got all these great use cases. Now we need to start building tools that actually tackle the problems. I'm more of a person who likes seeing things in action than reading specs and iterating over the same 3 words and changing musts and shoulds and and things like that. So I'd really like to move on to the tooling part. Yeah.
Well, I want to see the adoption of this more because to me, it makes it easier to deploy more and more apps. And I'm all about consumption. You guys know that already.
Looking forward to more collaboration, but also the end of the working draft of the spec so we can see all of these really incredible use cases.
Yeah, for me, it's a bit the same as Chris. I guess the specification is coming. It's going to be stable quite soon. So I expect to see more tools coming. And for now, we only have client tools for managing CNABs, and I expect to see more server-side things like an installation portal based on CNABs, on things like that. And I would really like to see that coming.
Well, we should have that in Azure. And on my side, it would be just very pragmatically, like building a mixin for Porter to deploy Azure functions, and then playing with these IoT scenarios. Cool. So that concludes our panel. Thank you very much all for coming. And if you have private questions, you can come ask the panel after the panel is over. Thank you very much.